Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Matthew. Today we are going to compare two stores of value. The first is the ancient yellow metal known as gold, and the second is the modern digital protocol we know as Bitcoin. I'm going to price the latter in terms of the former. Okay, so here we go. This chart is going to be Bitcoin in terms of gold. More precisely, how many gold ounces can you get at any point in time with one Bitcoin? Most of you who have been paying attention to Bitcoin for a few years now should certainly know that this chart looks kind of familiar. And Bitcoin is much easier understood and better to be shown on log scale, Bitcoin pricing data. So that's what we're doing here. If we do it on linear, things just look a little bit hard to understand here. Yes, we can look at the tooltip, but especially with these percentile bands, which we're going to look at the end of the video, it's not so easy. So you got to look at it on log scale. So I'm going to take off the regression percentiles and trendline, and let's just look at the ratio here for now. So as I mentioned, this might look familiar. It might even seem like this is the Bitcoin price in terms of US dollars, but it is not. This is the Bitcoin price in terms of ounces of gold. How many ounces of gold can we get with one Bitcoin? So yes, gold actually is less volatile against the dollar compared with Bitcoin. But as we'll see towards the end, when we draw a power regression trend line that's 95% R squared, it's not necessarily in the direction that you want it to be, whereas Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is volatile, but it is volatile in an upward trajectory. That is from the lower left hand of this chart to the upper right hand. And we will analyze that soon. So without any further ado, let's just run through this here. Again, this is Bitcoin in gold ounce terms. So I'm going to show you on the timelines here the local tops and bottoms of gold and Bitcoin. But my pricing data starts here. Bitcoin Pizza Day, our friend Laszlo, 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas. That's roughly $40 per 10,000 Bitcoins, or 0.4 cents per one Bitcoin. That's the data that I'm using. That's how I'm starting it here. And how many ounces of gold would that be at that time? You can check the tooltip. You can look at the left axis. It rounds to 0 ounces. So certainly in 2010, in 2009, in 2011, for a little bit, basically one Bitcoin would not get you 0.00 ounces of gold. But now let's look at the first local top here. Bitcoin went to $35 per Bitcoin. This is also the first MTGOX hack, which happened here in June 2011. So this was a local top, $35 per Bitcoin. How does that translate into gold ounces you can get with one Bitcoin? Well, we go above 0.00 ounces, 0.02 ounces per one Bitcoin we can achieve at this point in 2011. The Bitcoin price falls here. Gold actually goes up as well. So Bitcoin price falls in dollar terms, also in gold terms. Gold topped here, and this was not just a local top, this was the highest gold price ever at the time. Nearly $2,000 an ounce. Again, I'm using day end for these figures, so these aren't hourly candles or weekly charts or whatever. This is day end pricing data for both Bitcoin and gold. Gold topped here at $1,897 per ounce in September 2011. Bitcoin continued to fall, and it had a local bottom of $2.29 per Bitcoin here at the end of 2011, November 2011. So we were at 0.02 ounces of gold per one Bitcoin there in June. By the end of the year, November, December, we're back to 0, rounding to 0. Certainly we can see that it's higher than this, but I'm only going down to 2 decimals here. as far as ounces of gold goes, we're higher than here, but we're still rounding to 0 ounces of gold. And then moving on, let's reset the zoom. Let's just go now to this is the first kind of major top of Bitcoin, put Bitcoin on the map for a lot of people. And also it was the start of the crypto winter after said top. There's actually 2 tops. Bitcoin hit $200 per Bitcoin here in early 2013. And then at the end, it hit nearly $1,200, depending on the exchange. Certainly people sold Bitcoins for $1,200 per Bitcoin here. I'm catching the exact local top here at $1,135 per Bitcoin. How many ounces of gold could we get for that? Nearly 1. So this was a pretty remarkable rise for Bitcoin in only 2 years, where at the end of 2011, we were basically at 0 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin. And now we're at nearly 1 ounce of gold per Bitcoin here in December 2013. And this was also a local top in dollar terms as well. Reset the zoom. This started what we call the crypto winter. Let's go all the way to the next top. So Bitcoin hit a local bottom here. It fell against the dollar. It's also falling against gold. Remember, we were close to 1 ounce. Now we're back down again to 0.14 ounces of gold. Still above the prior lows, but pretty low from the prior local top. And in dollar terms, Bitcoin was $176 per Bitcoin at this point. Gold was also falling though. So that's interesting to note. Gold hit a local bottom here at the end of the year, the end of 2015, at $1,051 per 1 ounce of gold. So where gold was almost $2,000 at the end of 2011, it fell to at the end of 2015, it's basically half that, to $1,051. And Bitcoin starts to climb again in terms of both dollars and in terms of gold. And then we get to this point. This is kind of interesting here. This was March 2nd, actually, 2017. So you see here on the timeline, we have Bitcoin gold price parity, where both of them on their unit terms, on a unit basis, were about $1,240 each. $1,240 per Bitcoin, $1,240 per 1 ounce of gold. Now, of course, that does not mean that Bitcoin was, as far as the whole network goes, worth as much as all of the mining power, all of the gold that had been mined throughout 2,000 years, let's say. That's roughly 6.4 billion ounces of gold. Most people know it's around 10 trillion. Again, you have to factor in industrial gold in that and whatnot. But so it's even a little bit higher. But you can roughly say, yeah, gold is a $10 trillion industry. We've talked about this. Bitcoin at this time was maybe not even $100 billion industry at this point in 2017. So there were less Bitcoins here than there are today. Today at, I think, $28,000 plus, my block clock just showed me, as of this recording, Bitcoin is above a $500 billion industry. So, of course, take note, I am not saying that Bitcoin, the system, is worth as much as gold. The system, gold in its entirety, all of the mining power, all of the ounces of gold that have been mined throughout humanity. It has not been yet. It is just incredible that literally from, not even 5 years ago, from just 2 years prior, you're basically getting 10% of an ounce of gold per 1 Bitcoin, and you reach parity here. Little over 8 full years after the Bitcoin system had been working. It's just remarkable that you reached parity on a per unit basis. Okay, so continuing on here again, this is a per unit basis chart. We get to the Bitcoin local top of $20,000 per Bitcoin. Again, I'm catching here mid-December 2017, $19,641 per Bitcoin. How many gold ounces do we get at this point? 15. Is it exactly 15? Yeah, 15.62, close to 16 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin in December 2017. So just remarkable that we were at parity here in March 2017, and then not even a year later, you can get 15 times that amount of gold for the same Bitcoin. And again, at this point, people are trying to understand Bitcoin's true value proposition, its distributed nature, its decentralized nature, what a UTXO means, what one full Bitcoin means, which is 100 million Satoshis, what that means, what the hash rate is, what the difficulty is. There are plenty of scam coins, ICO projects, Bitcoin forks that are taking place at this time. There's just so many things that the market still, even to this day, of course, but at this point, just hadn't understood. And yes, Bitcoin perhaps got a bit beyond its skis at this point and was, $20,000 per Bitcoin seemed to be high. It retreated to where, let's get to here, let's zoom in. The local bottom in dollar terms was $3,185 mid-December 2018, one full year later. We retraced as well in terms of gold ounces. So we were at 15, close to 16 ounces of gold a year before. December 2018, 2.5 ounces of gold for the same Bitcoin. And gold actually hit a top as well here in August of 2020. So this is not, I shouldn't say as well. You're still, looking at almost 2 full years of data here. Bitcoin goes up, and as far as gold terms goes, it retraces a little bit. We get back to 8 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin. COVID hits, a big drop for Bitcoin, at least in gold terms. And then we actually get a top here where gold hits $2,061 per ounce in August 2020, just before the meme stocks and the next round of the crypto craze started. Gold actually hit its top here in 2020, which was an all-time high and a local high compared to prior cycles. And Bitcoin was worth roughly 5.5 ounces of gold at this point. And then we go up in Bitcoin terms, crypto craziness, NFTs, plenty of scam coins as well start up again. Let's zoom in just to here. We have the gold local top here in 2020, and then we have the double top in Bitcoin terms. We hit almost $70,000 per Bitcoin here in November 2021. This is the second top in US dollar terms. And in gold terms, you can see it's also a double top. So we were at close to 37 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin. That actually might be higher than this top. Let's see, 37.15. Let's go back. Got to zoom out all the way to get to there. No, it's not higher. So the second top, the end of 2021, was a local top, both in dollar terms and in gold terms for Bitcoin, to where you're, basically almost 37, a little over 37 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin in November 2021. And remember, just 4 years prior, we were at 1 ounce of gold per 1 Bitcoin. So in 4 years, Bitcoin was 37x higher. And 4 years before that, Bitcoin was infinitely higher because it was rounding to 0 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin here in 2009, 2010, and start of 2011. All right, let's just conclude this here. Now, we have the top here, and then we fall. Bitcoin falls. Gold falls as well. Actually, gold hits a local bottom here at the end of 2022 of $1,600 per 1 ounce of gold. This is just, it's hard to say if these are actually local bottoms. You kind of don't know until the next top, really. But nonetheless, the lows have been set here for both gold in September 2022, and then 2 months later, after he who shall not be named, major scammer in the crypto and Bitcoin space, early November 2022, Bitcoin hit a low in dollar terms of $15,758 per Bitcoin. In gold terms, we're back down to under 10 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin, 9.24 ounces of gold. And again, that's quite a bit lower than where we were here, where we're 25% roughly of the top here, 9-10 ounces of gold per here, where you're almost getting 37 ounces of gold at this point. So quite a big drop. And actually we hit bottoms even in gold terms and Bitcoin terms against the dollar at this point. But Bitcoin, remember, the green is Bitcoin against gold. The lows perhaps have set in where basically a little under 10, 9 to 10 ounces of gold per one Bitcoin here at the end of 2022 to where we are back up now as of this recording, which this is ended March 19th, which is a day ago from this recording. 14 ounces of gold per one Bitcoin. That is the price of Bitcoin in terms of gold here as of March 19th, 2023. So there you have it. That is Bitcoin in terms of gold ounces, and just quite remarkable where you can be rounding to zero here a little over 10 years ago to where we've been as high as 37 ounces of gold per the same Bitcoin, and now we're at 14 ounces of gold per the same Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still this thing that is very hard for people to wrap their heads around. I myself am learning new things about Bitcoin every day. It's a fascinating topic, comparing the old, ancient, historical value store, which is thousands of years old. And if we follow Nick Szabo's shelling out in some of his research, I mean, this can be tens of thousands plus year-old store of value as far as jewelry, beads, dowries, transferring value from your tribe from one generation to the next as a store of value. Gold certainly has been in the past. And can Bitcoin be that in the future? We certainly have entered the digital age, less than 30 years ago, really, from 1995, the advent of the World Wide Web. Of course, digital research was going on much before that, but as far as the consumer having access to this stuff, we are very, very early as far as not just generations go, but as far as humanity goes. It's just a fascinating thing to look at as far as this old store of value goes. Gold, looking at our new store of value, which is Bitcoin, the progression that Bitcoin has taken here. Now, let's close that progression here and wrap a bow on it. Let's actually now analyze the levels that we have been by running a trend line over this data. You might recall, if you watch my prior videos, the best regression trend line you can draw over the Bitcoin price is the power curve. It's also the best regression trend line you can draw over the Bitcoin market cap, as well as many features of Bitcoin is the power regression. Not linear, not logarithmic, not exponential. A power regression is the best trend line you can draw. See show notes for this and other videos for the coefficients in case you want to draw the same by yourself. I'm going to draw that here. It is a 95% R squared for the Bitcoin price against the dollar. It is also a 95% R squared for the Bitcoin price against gold. And here it is. So the beauty about a trend line is, of course, we can project and predict into the future. And when I say predict, it does not mean what you think it means. I don't know what the price is going to be tomorrow, next year, so on and so forth. This is just a statistical term based on this 95% R squared, which is a very strong goodness of fit. This is a very well-behaved set of data. So that's very interesting. But really, the important thing we can do with trend lines is we can draw percentiles. We can draw standard deviations. We can draw bands to see how out of the ordinary a top or bottom can be. So let's start with 1 sigma down, 1 sigma up. What does this mean? Everything inside of these blue bands is a 1 sigma event, or it will happen 2/3 of the time. So 2/3 of the time, the price of Bitcoin in gold terms will be within this blue band. All right, so let's go to 2011 here. It's rounding to zero. It's not a good example. Let's go to 2013. 1 sigma up was 0.04 ounces of gold. All right, let's just zoom in even a little bit. 1 sigma up, let's take off the down. 1 sigma up, 0.07 is actually the regression trend line. Focus on the 1 sigma up, 0.15 here at the top, 0.15 ounces of gold per one Bitcoin. That's 1 sigma up. And the power regression is 0.07. This is roughly where the trend line should be, right? Based on all of the data, the all-time data, actually. And where was Bitcoin at that point? It was nearly 1 ounce of gold. So we were well above trend, well above 1 sigma. Let's put the 1 sigma down again. So now we can see what happens when we go back down. Again, we fell back within a 1 sigma trend here within 2/3 of the time as we kind of started the crypto winter. And then we actually hit the bottom end of this 1 sigma move, 1 sigma down here, which was 0.21 ounces of gold per Bitcoin here in September 2015. And that was indeed the price per Bitcoin in terms of ounces at the same time. I'm not going to go through the whole cycle again, but that's, we've talked about this as well. The trend lines and the percentiles, very, very helpful. Now let's go ahead and put 2 sigma down and 2 sigma up. And now we can see what has been really extreme. So 2011 was an extreme move up. To the downside, really just at the very beginning when there's basically no pricing data, we were definitely below 2 sigma down. Again, what is 2 sigma? That's 95% of the observations will be within these red bands. 95% of the observations will occur here. We actually didn't even hit any 2 sigma down moves. Kind of 1 sigma down acted as support here, long-term support during the crypto winter. We weren't even close to 2 sigma down. The only time we came close, as it has been with the dollar-based data, is here just at the end of 2022, just after the final of the crypto scams blew up, the FTX debacle. Bitcoin went down to 15, hit its local bottom, a little under $16,000 per Bitcoin. Gold as well was at a bottom, but nonetheless, Bitcoin was falling faster. So as far as ounces of gold goes, again, look at the green here, 9.39 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. What is 2 sigma down? About 9.5, 9.7, 9.8 ounces per Bitcoin. Let's even zoom in a little bit more. So interestingly here, as it did with the dollar-based chart, on a gold-based chart, 2 sigma down actually acts as support for the Bitcoin price with a power regression, 95% R-squared. And then we can calculate out. So that's what's interesting here. And we can see that, yes, because Bitcoin is, quote, volatile, 2 sigma down and 2 sigma up moves will be, extreme. I mean, let's just, again, look at today. All right, so here we are. Again, 14 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin today or yesterday. 2 sigma down, 10.75 ounces per gold. So we're just above that. And let's even take out the 1 sigmas, all right, just to make it crystal clear. 2 sigma down, 10.75 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. Look at 2 sigma up at this point. If we were making a 2 sigma up move, we would get 227 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. And we haven't been in 2 sigma up territory for a long time, since 2017, in fact. Okay. So this is the beauty of trend lines. This is the beauty of well-behaved trend lines such as this. And this is just the fascinating thing, as far as I can tell, comparing an ancient store of value, the yellow metal, gold, with a new digital store of value, which is Bitcoin. Regardless of what any pundit tells you who doesn't know these numbers, hasn't done this research, you can see that, yes, there are cycles to this stuff. And if you think that Bitcoin has no value at all, well, then you're hoping for something that is outside of a 2 sigma move. And if you think that what we had just in the last few months was extreme, it was. It was indeed. It was outside of a 2 sigma move, just barely here. And now we're back above it. Now we're back above a 2 sigma move. We are not quite to a 1 sigma down move yet, i.e. coming back into that 2/3 of the time territory. We're still outside of 2/3 of the time, right? So we're between 2/3 and 95% of the time, but that's where we are. And we're certainly, it seems like it's support, of course, not financial advice. But the interesting thing is we can extend this out to where today, 14 ounces of gold, roughly, per Bitcoin. And again, see my videos for this further information in dollar terms, in market cap terms, so on and so forth. But in gold terms, the trend line itself at a 95% R squared tells us 419 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin by 2030. Okay, so that's just a little over 20 years from when Bitcoin started. Just a little over 20 years. You went from 0 ounces of gold per Bitcoin to 419 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. Now look at the extremes. This is where it is good for traders, if you want to look at it that way. If it makes a 2 sigma down move, it's still well above today, 136 ounces per Bitcoin, and 2 sigma up, 2,888 ounces of gold per 1 Bitcoin. It's just quite remarkable. So comparing legacy, historical, I have no problem with fascinating yellow metal gold ounces with new, much more fascinating Bitcoins on a protocol, Internet of Value, distributed, decentralized UTXOs that trade freely in the market worldwide with nearly no friction. Comparing these two things, you can see that Bitcoin itself moves from the lower left-hand side to the upper right-hand side. The trend line does as well. And I would just caution thinking that this is the end or the bottom is in. Again, not financial advice, but based on past performance, based on what the market has met at, that is supply and demand, that is price of Bitcoin in terms of gold. Over the last 14 years, Bitcoin is going nowhere but up in a power trendlined 95% R squared manner. And I think it's very important that you should probably pay attention to this moving into the future, especially in light of all the bank failures that have happened over the last week. I will talk more about that this week. That will do it for this video. Thank you very much for joining. Hope you enjoyed it.